There's only one way to introduce this episode.
No.
Not yet!
Bum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, bum, 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 ba, da-da-da, da-da-da, da, 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 da,
That's how the movie ends.
da, da. Right, but I mean,
If you are one who is knowledgeable in the music and also good at reading titles, you have figured out what we're talking about today.
But we're not talking about it
But
yet.
we're not
We have to do
talking
the
about it
intro
yet.
bit.
it was gonna be the intro bit. Come on, like like the little thing, and then we do the music, and then,
That doesn't necessarily exclude you from doing that.
We just don't talk about it now. Stop talking.
well,
We were complaining about the...
I thought you were going to start talking about the weather, and I was going to shut you down on that.
no.
We were complaining about the humidity, and I had a pun.
And now we're talking about the weather.
We weren't.
We explicitly wanted to not start our podcast by talking about the weather.
We were not quite.
101 ways to not start a podcast.
Yes.
I mean, our entire listener base already knows what the weather in Fargo, North Dakota is like. So it is.
I wasn't going to talk about that, but now that you brought it up,
Now that we've brought it up, we can complain.
I have really nothing to complain about.
You're not going to want to complain about yesterday
Mm-mm.
while we were playing Frisbee?
I thought it was. It probably would have been.
Extraordinarily windy.
Yeah, it was bad for Frisbee, but
You could throw a Frisbee 20 feet to your guy's left, and it would hit him spot on. It was disgusting.
and you could throw release the Frisbee a foot off the ground, and it would shoot up 20 feet into the air because lift. From a personal comfort standpoint, it wasn't bad last night.
No.
The wind, it's been kind of humid, so the wind kind of helped with that.
You know what they say? Air is too humid.
Air is too humid.
I was holding on to that one for so long now.
I like that. I like that a lot. I feel like, I don't know. You look at one blog, and the rest look all the same. But one blog article that I saw yesterday was kind of right up our alley. I think, if I remember, I'll try to share it on our Twitter, Facebook, or whatnot, because it's an article on Word on Fire about the beauty in video games. So it should be good reading. I can.
Whomst his due.
It wasn't Bishop Robert Barron. That would have been pretty neat. But
Who?
well,
I'm not familiar with that name.
let me check who the author was, if I can find it.
Who wasn't the author of this thing?
Who wasn't?
Yeah,
'Cause we
that
totally
name you
was-
mentioned. I'm not sure I've ever heard it before.
Wait, they have a whole series on this?
I wrote a whole blog post on why
No, I hate video
It was
games.
by Father Blake Britton, was the author of the article.
Don't know him.
Right. That is probably one of my favorite lines from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like, when they decide to attack the rabbit, just like, right! Just the delivery is pretty spot on.
Delivery is like most of what makes great comedy.
Except DiGiorno. Because it's not.
That's not delivery.
It's DiGiorno.
It's like, what? But the moment when you realize,
ASMR pizza delivery.
oh gosh. That moment when you realize DiGiorno gets to Walmart in a delivery truck and it destroys your world.
Moses goes to the Jewish people and he's like, I've brought you not deliverance, but DiGiorno.
Riley just said "re," so I imagined Moses coming down from the mountain, sees the golden calf. Just smashes the 10 Commandments. That's like the new topical, relatable kids content. Just watch some mega church.
Kids don't re.
No, well, relatable youth content.
They're too young for re.
Yeah.
Relatable
Re
youth
is-
content then.
Re was like a 2015 thing.
Fair enough. But I mean, if somebody were to take a passing glance at meme culture and try to adapt the Bible to be understood by today's kids by
It
using
would be
memes,
awful
it would be
and
quite
heretical.
terrible. Yes, it'd be quite
Well,
terrible.
Maybe not.
Okay.
There's a lot of potential there.
Yes.
Hmm.
Jesus, you were dead. Well, yes, but actually no.
I think I saw that one around Easter time.
Well, yes.
Dank Christian memes
Mhm.
on Reddit. Great place. For some top
Let's see. That's the pirate. Is it just called the Pirates?
Pirates Band of Misfits.
Yeah,
I have not seen it.
I kind of
though.
want to see that. It's by the same
It's the same
studio.
people that did.
Wallace and Gromit, Chicken Run, all
Yeah.
that fun stuff. Aardman. Although for that one they were with Sony and not DreamWorks. So that's why it's probably lesser known. But from bits I've seen of it, it looks pretty funny. I think it's got Martin Freeman in it too. He's one of the characters.
Sure.
I don't know who the voice of like the main pirate captain is, but
Probably some voice actor.
one would hope. Hey, you look like a pirate. Do you want to play a voice actor?
You have a face for radio.
What have you have the voice for silent movies? What?
It's actually a major plot point in Singing in the Rain.
Yep. I haven't like watched that.
Stand him.
That I haven't watched Singing in the Rain in a hot minute. It's been.
Oh, you've never watched Singing in the Rain.
It's like a classic '60s, I think, musical. I feel like we've talked about this recently. I'm getting serious deja vu right now.
Yeah.
There's no good thing that came out of the 60s.
Well, some musicals. You have like, Singing in the Rain's one, but what's another one? There's a
Around
couple.
the same
Bing
time
Crosby.
there was-
Bing Crosby started in the 40s. though.
Right, but he made a few movies during
But he
that
didn't
time.
start in the 60s, so he's not
No.
really of the 60s.
Fair enough.
In the 60s, but not of it.
Yeah. What else came out of the '60s that isn't culturally, morally depraved?
I mean, there's
Somebody's screaming the Beatles at us while they're listening to us.
I don't think Isaac listens to these yet.
No, but
I mean,
other people.
that would be a good movie to watch for the podcast. Yesterday, I've not yet seen it.
We gotta watch Aquaman first.
I know my
yes,
mom
that
doesn't
one
listen to
was.
this, but I could say the good thing that came out of the '60s was my mom.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily. I'm not saying when into the '60s she was born. I'm just throwing that out there. So I'm not aging her. So I'm still.
You
You
are
are putting a decade on
an
her.
upper bound on her age.
Yeah,
And a lower bound.
I'm towing the line, but try not to cross
A
it.
10-year window is decent enough.
Yeah.
To be qualifying as aging her.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not ageist though. '60s were a long, long time ago,
They were 60 years ago.
and in some ways, it feels
In
like
a moral galaxy.
far, far, away.
away.
And we, the Palladium Papists, I'm James,
I'm Nathan.
Riley.
will be exploring another such galaxy that is actually long, long time ago and far, far away.
From the 70s, though.
Yeah, different decade.
Well, the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s.
But if you
Most of
haven't
the 80s, but
seen Star Wars yet, are you alive?
hello.
Yes, probably. But
Are you listening to this podcast?
if you
Probably no.
If you're the sort of yes, the answer to that question is probably not. But if you are the sort of person who's probably
At least
encountered
vaguely
Star Wars
familiar.
at some point in their life.
Knows the premise.
I mean, we're a podcast that talks about pop culture and such. So, if that's the the method by which you were interested in listening to us, well, then you've probably become familiar with Star Wars.
If you're
if you're somebody we know, you have probably seen Star Wars with us at some point.
Yeah, odds are in the last few years.
Although it probably wasn't the classics. It was probably one of the ones we went to theaters to see.
Yeah. There was a couple marathons we did, but yeah, obviously
There was a couple,
today.
but that was mostly as a house.
Yeah. Well, no, we did, or I suppose you weren't there at that point, but
No, I
at
guess-
the Newman Center we did a marathon leading up to, I think,
Seven. Probably.
7, yeah.
We probably did a marathon leading up to 7 when I was.
Or maybe it was 8. I don't remember.
No,
well, no,
8 came out when I was here.
right. Yeah. But I mean the other marathon that I'm thinking of, or maybe we just felt like watching Star Wars. But yeah, we're talking about
we've
Star
watched
Wars today.
Star Wars several times within the last 5 years. We'll just put it like that.
Yep. And that, of course, is our topic for today.
Yes.
We're not even going to bother going over the plot because, like we've said, odds are you already are familiar enough or know it like the back of your brain. Or your hand.
Know it like the back of your brain.
It's in the back of your head at all times, or I completely messed that up.
I know the
Gee,
story.
I just look at the back of my brain all the time.
Your eyes don't
roll
go back there.
backward, like- it's all wrinkly.
Did you guys?
That is how empty your skull is. You can see the back and the front simultaneously.
Did you guys ever like have siblings or friends tell you like if you roll your eyes in the back, like back in your head, you can see your brain?
No, I heard the variant where it was if you roll your eyes back in your head, it'll get stuck like that.
Yeah, or like go cross-eyed or whatever.
And it never made sense. See, at the back of your brain, there's no light getting in through there. It's
No.
not like I'm going to be able
And there's
to
no light for your eyes to see, even if that was possible.
No, unless you're translucent, and in that case, you have other problems.
Yes. Got to put sunscreen on to protect your brain.
Now we're actually bantering and getting off topic.
Yeah.
We should have saved all of that for before we started talking. About
We
the
should have
actual-
saved it for before this. All right, where do we want to start with Star Wars?
the beginning.
Like in our timeline, the beginning.
I was waiting for the which beginning.
Yes.
Let's start with 4 because
All right.
4 is the start of the saga.
The Genesis, as it were,
No,
The Genesis
I would. It's
of the franchise.
of the Sega.
Anyway.
I just realized what you did. I was about to correct you.
I thought that's what you were going for.
I was about to correct you. But yeah. Anyway, episode 4, A New Hope. Y'all know the drill. Anakin,
What, do you know the drill?
Okay, Luke, droids show up, blow up Death Star, old man dies, out of order.
Use the Force, Luke.
Yeah.
Anyway, classic hero's journey stuff. Call to action, mentor, kind of.
Explicitly hero's journey. I'm pretty sure, like, didn't he use, like, Joseph Campbell's book to write?
Yes. George Lucas unabashedly plagiarized from everywhere.
Yes.
And just kind of remixed it and remashed it in a way that was paying homage while also pushing forward.
That's not to say he didn't have an original take,
No.
or
He
that
just-
Star Wars is necessarily derivative, per se.
It is derivative. All media is derivative.
Right.
So, I mean, it's derivative of like all sorts of the hero's journey as a template, Flash Gordon, the
Dune.
samurai films.
But the world that he built is pretty original.
It's a desert in Nevada. And
No.
It's Dune.
The galaxy.
Anyway, it's cool.
Yeah.
I like Star Wars a lot. It's like one of my favorite things.
That's the episode, folks. We're the
done.
Palladium.
We're done. Wrap it up. Like and
That's all,
subscribe.
folks.
But yeah,
No, we have more insight than that.
I guess. Okay, so you mentioned that it's pulled from a lot of different places. What are some of those places that influenced George Lucas's work besides Joseph Campbell's hero's journey stuff?
Well, he was just saying.
Dune. Explain the connection.
It's literally a Dune ripoff.
Explain the connection. Because I don't know what Dune is, and odds are a lot of other people don't either.
It's like Star Wars?
It's basically like, imagine the plot of Star Wars. Like, that's exactly what Dune was. Dune was a very similar thing in terms of desert planet, kid, do magical thing. Like, in terms of its high-level premise, it's virtually the same sort of thing.
Sure. But when did Dune come out?
Upstate New York.
I always do that to other people, and no one has ever done that to me. So I appreciate
Yes.
that. I think it was the mid-70s.
Okay.
But also there's a...
And they clearly referenced that point in the 9th film when they started talking about the spice trade.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that the spice is like the thing in Dune. Like, that's like
Sure.
the plot revolving point is spice. So
There's also like an old samurai movie by Akira Kurosawa called The Hidden Fortress, I believe.
Okay.
And it's about an old samurai warrior who teams up with, I believe, I haven't seen it myself. I've heard it described to me by my older brother.
Mm-hmm.
But like, there's an old samurai who is on a mission to save this princess from an evil warlord, and he's accompanied by two, basically R2D2 and C3PO type like buffoon characters.
Yeah.
There might be a young farm boy in there too. So there's like, and if you look at Darth Vader's design, he's got a samurai helmet,
Yeah.
basically. So, and
I've
all
seen
sorts-
fan art where like it's reimagined like all samurai, even the stormtroopers and stuff.
right. There's also like the final trench run on the Death Star is lifted right out of a World War II like
Newsreels, footage,
stuff. Yeah,
things like that.
I think there was actually just a movie that he like copied like scene for scene,
Was it it might have been like a John Ford documentary or something,
maybe.
because he was like this Hollywood filmmaker that went to different battles and filmed them during World War II.
So it is like explicitly derivative in everything it does, and yet it packages it in a fun, colorful, exciting new way.
Yeah.
I mean, even the iconic score by John Williams, there are other film scores that came before that you can point to and say, oh, wait, that's Star Wars. I forget which one it was, but there's like one that he allegedly ripped off.
And isn't there, which composer did they had like sort of their space, like, you know, you have the Mars theme and different things like that. Like
I
he
don't
had
think he ripped off
Holst. I mean, not ripped off, but it's
I
very
would
similar
say I don't agree.
kind of music.
I don't agree.
Well, you've mentioned that John Williams is sort of ripped off.
John Williams didn't rip off Holst. He ripped off other stuff.
Ah,
Holst is like a more contemporary composer. This was like a classical piece that was.
oh, sure.
He's not contemporary, but he's much more recent than the classical period.
We're not. Obviously, John Williams is.
He's like
A good
my
composer.
favorite film composer because Star Wars, the Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, the first couple Harry Potters,
The Rocketeer, but we don't talk about that one.
the 70s Superman stuff. He's everywhere.
Yeah, he's got quite the
awesome.
filmography. But and I mean the Star Wars score is probably one of the most well-known
Oh yeah,
movie soundtracks ever. Like every
mean,
bit.
Duel of the Fates from Star Wars Episode 1 is A, the best thing to come out of Episode 1,
Yeah.
and B, one of the best pieces of film score ever. If you
Yeah. And I think A New Hope has probably some of the best music in the series. It's got probably the most memorable.
It's got like 3 leitmotifs in the
Right.
entire movie.
Yeah.
It's 5 and 6 where they start really kicking it up because 5 is when they introduce the Imperial March,
Oh, sure.
and 6 has got a whole bunch of stuff going on, like all of the like there's all sorts of the Ewoks got all their music, and you got like the Emperor's theme and Darth Vader's theme starts to get played with in new ways, and it's all great stuff. I love it.
Yeah. I suppose we've been sort of
We've been
knocking.
meandering.
We've been meandering. So I guess
Star Wars 4, Death Star blows up. Star Wars 5, they're on planet.
we could talk about some of the character arcs that take place. Obviously,
Oh, we
there's
can.
Luke, but Han Solo is
Han shot first, and that
Yeah.
adds to his character arc because he starts as this untrustworthy scum who's all out for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the film, he's a proper self-sacrificing hero.
Yeah.
By the end of Star Wars 6, well, into 7, he kind of completes his arc.
Yep. And what else? I think there's good character change that takes place in the film. Like honestly, the only like good guy character that doesn't change is ironically Obi-Wan.
Well, that's because he's
died.
the wise old guy that has.
He died.
Yeah. Well, he underwent a change there. I suppose he went from being alive to being
dead,
one with the Force, if you will.
Yeah.
And I feel like an old mentor character like that isn't one that, in this particular kind of story, isn't supposed to change.
Mm-hmm.
He is the one to inspire change.
Yeah.
And to be aspired to become, right? He is the one who has kind of achieved his calling and his purpose. By the end of A New Hope, he has taught Luke just enough, and he needs to offer his sacrifice to aid him later.
Yeah.
Right?
Darth Vader. Well, he's like the main big bad, probably one of the most famous
characters ever.
Yeah.
But he isn't even the big bad.
No.
It is revealed halfway through 5 and into 6 that the Emperor is kind of the guy in charge and the one he is subservient to.
Yeah. And Vader even plays kind of second fiddle to like Tarkin and like different Imperial officers in the first film.
Yeah, he's kind of just in the first couple movies, he's kind of a lackey, which is kind of odd because you don't remember him like that. But he's taking orders from the Grand Moff Tarkin, played by Peter Cushing.
Telling him who he can and can't choke in the meeting room.
I mean, in Star Wars 5, nobody's telling him who not to choke, and he's promoting people himself. I feel like he's stepped up a bit since.
Yeah, well, because everybody else is dead. That was above him, except for the Emperor. But I guess how would you describe Princess Leia's arc in A New Hope?
Within A New Hope?
I think we can talk about it broadly across the whole.
Across the whole
trilogy.
Within A New Hope, she doesn't change all that much.
No.
She goes from I'm captured and rebellious to I'm a rebel and rebellious.
Yeah. Although she kind of shifts to like, back to her leadership context.
Right. But I think even as a leader, she's a bit of a free spirit.
Yeah.
She's kind of a nobody tells me what to do because I'm in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, over the course of the films, it is revealed that Luke is her brother and that she is also Darth Vader's daughter and that she also has some latent Force abilities.
Yep.
And so there's this discovery, self-discovery, if you will, about that.
Yep. How would you say Chewbacca's arc is?
His job is to be loyal. He is basically a dog.
Chewbacca is like the most unchanging character in the entire series.
R2-D2.
Okay, fine.
R2-D2 is
even
profane the whole series.
Yes.
He is so
Canonically
foul-mouthed that they had to bleep out every word he says.
And that's a joke, but it's also canonically true. Like the way they originally wrote R2-D2, at least according to legend, was that he was like, this very coarse-mouthed
I mean,
droid.
You can even tell through the context clues of C-3PO's dialogue that he is an extremely snarky and sarcastic character. Which is... And you kind of get that impression from his beeps and whistles, too. It's kind of great, the sound design behind him, how they made him so expressive without saying anything.
I think the word to describe C-3PO, on the other hand, would be neurotic. Almost.
Yeah.
Very timid, but he's obviously smart.
He's like a wet blanket.
Yeah. He is the wet blanket of the series. Let me tell you how much...
let me tell you how awfully the odds are stacked against us, because I think that's...
Never tell me the odds.
And then Han Solo, being the...
Speaking of Han Solo, we didn't talk about Han Solo as he relates to Princess Leia. That's part of her arc.
It is. It's also part of his arc.
Yes.
Wow. It's as if they have a relationship or something.
It's like... I'm not going to say it, but... They sort of, especially in episode 5, they sort of like kind of introduce. Well, obviously they introduced their relationship in the first film, but like,
in the first film, it's very
their bickering is sort of like, are they?
They're very much butting heads.
Mm-hmm.
They're both very strong-willed people.
Yeah, independent, strong-willed people.
Yeah, in that way, they're both kind of butt heads, and so they butt heads.
Mm-hmm. She doesn't like him because he's a rogue, and
he doesn't like being tied down, and so
Yeah.
he doesn't like her authority over him. And
they
being
bond
involved.
over neither of them wanting anyone else to tell them what to do. Especially in the second movie, that's sort of
They kind of get stuck together on the Falcon,
yeah.
Han Solo's ship, for those of you uneducated
Yeah.
who are still listening. Anyway, so like the Falcon's kind of a junker, but also an amazing ship.
Very fast when it works.
It's, right, when it works, and that's the key thing. So like they're stranded in an asteroid field trying to fix the Falcon, and that's kind of where Han and Leia are in close enough quarters to like start getting comfortable with each other.
Yeah. Kind of. They're still
abrasive toward each other.
Yeah.
'Cause that's the relationship.
but that's where they really start. Well, as The Empire Strike Back opens up, their relationship is like, there's obviously some attraction there, but they're still butting heads and like, you know, still have their differences and such. But Leia at least doesn't want to admit it.
And over the course of like this whole getting stuck in the asteroid field,
Mm-hmm.
You more and more realize, or she comes to like respect Han for his prowess in his work and in his outside the box thinking and his strategy, just escaping the Star Destroyer and getting out of the.
As haphazard as he can be, sometimes he's quite a capable pilot and so forth.
And so that kind of makes her start to understand him more.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go meet Lando Calrissian, and there's all that stuff. And so
Yeah, all that jazz.
they go to the Cloud City, and they're in their mutual distrust for Lando's brings them together.
Which pays off in that. Well, it doesn't. Well, it is justified.
It pays off for Boba Fett.
Yeah. How would you say he's Boba Fett's arc in Star? No.
He's no good to me, dead. That is literally his arc. He goes from a strong, silent, kind of cool background character to dead.
Yes. Although if you pay attention to recent canon changes, apparently not, but who cares?
I mean, that wasn't recent. He's been alive and kicking around since the mid-'80s.
I guess, yeah.
He's in the expanded universe stuff. I don't know if they scrapped his escape from the Sarlacc pit in modern canon, or if they just redid it.
Yeah, I don't know. Canon is so murky after the
Ever
whole
since
Disney
the
thing.
buyout, yeah.
Yeah, but at any rate,
There's like the Star Wars Legends and the new canon, and then the new comics and the Mandalorian TV show.
I suppose we can bring
movies.
it back around to Luke's arc as it continues in The Empire Strikes Back, because he's sort of beginning to develop his Jedi skills.
Right. On his own, he's kind of a very talented person in the Force with the Rebels, and he's kind of worked his way up the ranks as a skilled pilot and kind of gains the trust of people and kind of a star figure.
But Mercy has to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Goes around to Dagobah.
By the prompting of Ghost Obi-Wan.
And there on Dagobah he finds Yoda, who teaches him a lot of things about the Force.
About the Force. This is actually where we get the most information on the Force in the original trilogy.
Yep.
I mean, it gets a brief explanation by Obi-Wan, who's all like, it's
a field that goes through all of us and pantheism. Oh, goodness. He speaks a lot more coherently than that. Actually, he's quite articulate. But yeah, no. Another thing, too, that's one of the main, like, there's some friction between him and Yoda over, like, he really wants to, like,
Luke
face
is
Vader.
motivated to face Vader and save his friends, and Yoda's like, no, you're not mentally prepared, you're not spiritually prepared for that.
Yep.
You need to wait here and train with me. And he's like, no, I'm gonna fly my ship that you lifted out of the mud because I wasn't faithful enough to be able to do it.
Sort of ignoring warnings.
Another warning he ignores is the cave, the vision in the cave where he goes to because there's like a cave on Dagobah,
Yep.
which has like
At least one.
some kind of at least one. But there's a specific one that apparently has some concentration of the Force in it, like kind of this dark side cloud in there that Luke goes into, and he sees Darth Vader, and he draws out his weapon and fights him and chops his head off, and the mask blows up, and it's my face underneath.
Mm-hmm.
There's like this whole symbolism in that
So,
vision.
what he could become if he
allows himself to be ruled by his emotions and his
ambitions.
ambitions.
Yeah. In spite of all that, yeah, he sort of ignores the warnings. But to his credit, well, and then to the credit of Ghost Obi-Wan and Yoda as well, they respect him enough to not
Let him make the decision.
Yeah. They're like, all right, well, we taught you these skills. Make sure you hang on to them. They'll save your life.
Mm-hmm.
Which is sort of, I think, probably the proper approach as, like, when it comes to, like, the sort of, like, teacher-mentor relationship is, like, or in any sort of relationship where you're, like, trying to advise someone. It's like, give them that freedom and trust them, even though, sometimes they're making a bad decision because ultimately they probably knew that they would have done more harm if they had tried to force him to remain.
Right. And he eventually had to discover the truth that they were coyly hiding from him.
Mm-hmm.
That being the big plot twist of the series, where
I am your father.
Where it turns out Darth Vader didn't murder Luke's father. Darth Vader is his father, which brings another level of symbolism to that vision in the cave.
Yeah, and I guess we're sort of a generation or two removed from that big reveal, but apparently like people in the day could not believe that Luke was his father. Like they were waiting for that to be changed when the next movie came out.
Right, which is why they had to add the scene where Yoda's like, no, yeah, he's your father. We just didn't tell you. And Obi-Wan's like, well, what I told you was true from a certain point of view.
Yeah. It was probably one of the most iconic plot twists in cinema history up until that point.
Up until I See Dead People.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen The Sixth Sense, but...
Well, you ought to. It's a good one.
But yeah. So
basically, in learning that Darth Vader was once a good man, that he was once Luke's father, right?
Mm-hmm.
Luke realizes between that and his encounter in the cave that...
And losing a hand.
And losing a hand and having it replaced by a robotic hand, which Darth Vader, if you didn't know,
is kind of a cyborg at this point, yeah.
He's more machine now than man, twisted and evil.
Yeah.
But Luke's like, well, if there's any hope for me to not go to the dark side, there's hope for him to come back, right? So Luke kind of holds on to this, or has to hold on to this hope, because if Darth Vader can't be saved, Luke is on a trajectory where he can't be saved in a lot of ways, having gone against Yoda and having his instinct to be bringing his weapon into the cave and killing Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm. And that sort of continues into episode 6.
Right.
Where
there's a
like
brief Han rescue mission where he's in carbonite and Leia saves him.
Luke's using force choke powers and different things.
Yeah, it kind
And
of
flippy flips.
and dressing in dark, like
kind of starts
black.
with a little bit of a fake out.
Yeah, but like, but even so, like he sort of still is flirting with that power a little bit. But
The idea of the dark side, there's this temptation in a way.
Yeah, but ultimately he's hyper focused on redeeming his father, Luke. Or Anakin.
Have you seen this movie?
Yes. I keep saying the wrong...
Wrong Skywalker?
I was about to say I keep saying the wrong Anakin. The wrong Skywalker, dang it.
Don't go calling anyone Ray or I'll hit you.
We won't talk about that. Okay.
Not yet.
We will spare you for now.
Anyway, so yeah, third movie, new Death Star. The Emperor is coming to the Death Star. They go to blow up the Death Star, but Luke hands himself over to the Imperials, and that's where he tries to turn Darth Vader, and where the Emperor tries to turn him.
And they all just stand there. Stare out the window. And the ships blowing each other up.
Yeah. Well, I feel like due to the nature of film, the length of that scene was made
It
a
was
lot.
split up between
Yeah.
the flying and the Ewoks.
No.
Do it.
It's hard to
No.
I don't wanna.
Do it.
do it,
I don't wanna.
but
Do it.
Maybe.
one meme I saw recently in the scene where Luke and Darth Vader are fighting again in the Death Star was when Luke does like a backflip onto a platform.
It's over, Darth Vader. I have the high ground.
It's like impressive. Obi-Wan taught you well. It's like
throws
he's
the
saying that
lights.
because he has the high ground. It's like actually, I'm pretty sure that might have. I mean, that might.
But then he throws the lightsaber up to the catwalk and knocks it down. It's like, ha, so much for your high ground.
Mm-hmm. Anyway,
I wonder
kinda-
if he specifically asked for that to be part of the design.
Yeah.
No high ground in this one.
Yeah. Is that why this is a ball?
Oh, that's why old Ben died. He didn't have the high ground that time.
Yeah. Should have brought a stool.
The high ground will not save you now.
Yeah. But and sort of Luke ends up being like sort of obviously the catalyst for Vader's change.
Right, during that final fight, Luke is pushed to the edge by the goading of the Emperor and Darth Vader. He beats...
You get the sense that Vader starts fighting him to prevent him from killing the Emperor. Strike me down and whatever.
Right, the Emperor is all trying to get Luke to give in to his anger and his rage and become aligned with the dark side.
And so
Even if it means killing him, because he's like... Because that's the easiest thing to
because
get him
like
to do.
you
at
know
this
he's
point.
watching his friends the rebels duking it out with the Empire outside the window, and so he, in like a burst of passion, he like yoinks out his lightsaber and tries to attack the Emperor, and Vader stops him. Yeah.
And then, like, during the fight, Luke gets really brutal right at the end. He cuts off his Darth Vader's hand and has him up against the rail and is about to kill him. And the
then
the Emperor's like, yes,
good.
kill him now. and Luke, realizing what he's done, he's like, oh,
The severed hand being a reminder.
of his own robotic hand and his own corruption, his own draw to the dark side.
What he could become.
He decides, well, it's better that I die a hero than live long enough to see myself become the villain.
Mm-hmm.
To quote Batman.
And then Emperor's like, well, screw that. I'm going to zap you.
Yeah, then the Emperor zaps Luke until Darth Vader throws the Emperor down the hole to save his son with his last shred of humanity, and the Emperor definitely dies. Definitely, for sure, totally dies. He's
Very dead.
Very, very, very dead. All of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
Every ounce of dead.
Nobody who dies in Star Wars is really dead.
Or in any Disney franchise.
Except unless they're a parent.
Oh, yeah.
If it's Disney and the parents die...
Yeah. Maybe that was his problem. He had kids. That's why Darth Vader died.
Oh, yeah. That was... Disney has that effect of... That's
I mean-
why Padme died.
Yeah.
I'm a mother. I must die now.
Yeah. I mean, this is pre-Disney Star Wars, but...
But it could sense the future. It could
Yeah.
sense it coming. Anyway, so Darth Vader redeems himself by saving his son.
And becomes Anakin once more.
Yes. He takes off his helmet and says, yeah.
I want to see my son with my own eyes.
And so Luke escapes the Death Star right before it blows up because...
The second Death Star,
Yes. There are multiple.
to the uneducated.
Yes. We'll put it like that.
Yeah.
Because we are talking about Star Wars 6.
Yeah. And the episode 6 also kind of sees like kind of the completion of Han and Leia's arc as well.
Right.
There are obviously kind of a couple at this point. Well, she rescued him, because she loves him.
And interestingly, Han not being aware of Luke and Leia's relationship as brother and sister.
Yeah.
He gets this kind of sense that he's competing with Luke for Leia.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the 6th movie,
He's about
when
ready
the
to
Death
peace
Star
out.
blows up, they look at the sky and see the Death Star blew up, and he can see that Leia's a little bit troubled, and he's like, well, I'm sure Luke wasn't on there. And she's like, yeah, I know. It's like, and he's like, you really love Luke, don't you? And she's like, well, yeah. He's like, and he is the big enough man at this point to say, you know what? I will back off.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh, no, it's not like that.
No.
Different kind of thing.
No. We're on the north side of Endor. This isn't.
So, but it kind of is indicative of Han's arc, right? He has become less self-centered, less egotistical, less self-gratifying, and makes a decision that would be best for her.
Yeah.
But it also happens to work out in his favor.
He's very, very pleased that's not the case.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's kind of indicative of his actually becoming a man at this point.
Yeah, and with the help of Ewoks, they managed to defeat the Empire, and definitely all the main characters of the original trilogy live happily ever after and have happy endings.
Yes, definitely.
That's absolutely what
For
happens.
sure. For at least 30 years.
Yes. Those 30 years weren't long enough. Anyway, I guess anything else from the original trilogy we want to cover?
I mean, we've what about C-3PO's arc?
My friends, I wanted to look one last time.
My friend.
What about the bald guy in Cloud City with the weird thing on his head?
Labat?
Like, yeah. What do you suppose his arc is? He goes from not killing stormtroopers to killing stormtroopers by the end of the movie. I have altered the plot point. Pray I don't alter it any further. That is what...
That's what George Lucas said when he made Han not shoot first.
Yeah. It's like, I have altered the footage. Pray I don't alter it any further.
And then they go and add Jabba to the
And
New
really
Hope.
crappy 3D animated
Yeah.
lizard horses.
Funny story about that is they actually filmed that with just a guy.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how they got that footage. They just CG'd Jabba over the large hairy fellow.
It works until you see him walk
You're
behind.
a beautiful human being.
Yeah.
And that's why that line is in there. It's a relic from when he was actually a human being.
Yeah.
But it also fits a sarcastic character, so it kind of works.
Like, they made it work. The shot works until Luke or Han tries to walk behind Jabba,
Yeah,
and it sort of does a weird little like
yeah. He has to walk over his tail, and they animate Jabba reacting
like very poorly.
I grew up with like the VHSs of
With
the
theatrical
original
release, yeah.
theatrical releases.
Yeah, that's what I originally watched as well.
And that's the Star Wars I know. I watched the remakes and was like, oh, that explosion animation has changed. That's a change for the better.
Yeah.
Oh, they changed the Jabba dancing sequence. That is not a change for the better.
Yeah. What do we have to say about the prequels?
The prequels,
They got lots of good meat.
very good.
Yeah.
They set up
This is where the fun
Anakin's,
begins.
Like spiral into the dark side.
Into Darth Vader, yeah.
Right. That's kind of the main thing. It's like fleshing out his arc and giving it some context, which sometimes works. It doesn't work when you talk about the romantic dialogue because, let's face it, George Lucas can't write dialogue to save his life.
No.
I don't like
The main conflict for Anakin is, between his duties and wanting
And
to
his
protect those
emotions.
he loves, yeah. His emotions.
It's like
rather unstable, to
Right.
put it mildly.
and wanting Padme.
Yes.
so. It's like the idea is like the draw to the dark side is this temptation to serve yourself, right?
Get what he
To
wants.
And what he wants is kind of mastery over the Force so he can keep people alive.
Yep.
Whereas kind of the Jedi way is to give oneself to the Force and
Yeah.
let it guide them, right?
And he's like, there's the whole prophecy, that somebody would.
He's the
rise
chosen
up
one to
and-
bring balance to the Force. And
He's
by
one of the most-
balance, he means there's 2 Sith.
Yeah.
Make there be 2 Jedi.
Yeah. It's he's one of the most powerful Jedi ever
Pretty much.
by virtue of his genetics, I guess. I don't know. He's the one chosen by the Force.
More or less.
He's the one chosen by the Force to be. Like, he's very, very
We
powerful.
don't know who his father is.
No.
Actually,
Well, his mom says there was none.
I believe in some of the recent comments, it is either recent comics, it is either heavily hinted or outright confirmed that it was Darth Sidious that brought the midichlorians together to create him.
Yeah.
Which, in that context, Rey being his granddaughter and Anakin having his grandson be Ben, and them kissing at the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama 100.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so that aside,
Yeah. Even if it was a Palpatine clone, like the recent stuff is just a mess.
it is a mess. That's
But-
putting it nice.
But yeah, the prequels, the two real main characters are Anakin and Obi-Wan. who-
Right. It's and the whole
and Padme kind of as well.
And Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yes. Well, he's in the first film.
Yes, he is like the Obi-Wan of the prequels.
Yeah.
and Samuel L.
he
Jackson.
He is to the prequels as Obi-Wan is to the original.
He's that way for Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Because he's Obi-Wan's,
And
master.
that way, as in being old and wise and dead.
Yeah.
Yes.
By the hand of a Sith.
Except he's a little bit different insofar as he is willing to break the rules.
Yeah. Because he believes... Qui-Gon's whole thing is like he believes that, the Jedi should be subject to the will of the Force or whatever.
Yes.
And whereas the Jedi,
The Jedi
are
are starting to kind of lose their way.
Well, the
At
Jedi
this point.
have lost their way a long time.
The Jedi aren't dead yet in the prequels at the beginning.
The Jedi
Right.
have been going astray for a very long time.
Yeah.
It's like Vatican II.
Yeah.
There was
Actually-
bad crap going on long before that happened.
Yeah.
But that thing just sort of catalyzed the whole collapse of everything.
Yeah.
You could call the prequel trilogy the Vatican II or the
You
Jedi.
can tell the events of the prequel trilogy. Order 66.
The new trilogy is the Amazon conference or the Amazon Senate.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh goodness. All right. Anyway, but
Anyway,
Obi-Wan.
yes, in he's like Qui-Gon is sort of like a I want the Jedi to return to the spirit around which we were originally founded
Yep.
and not sort of this political force that they've become
Mm-hmm.
at this point in the history of the galaxy.
And the loss of him as a teacher really, it affects Obi-Wan, but it probably affects how Anakin would effectively be raised. I mean, he's like 9 at this point, but
Because Obi-Wan at that point pledges to train him.
Yeah.
Even though Obi-Wan himself is still being trained.
He
hadn't passed the
become a-
trials yet. Although they I think it's sort of implied that him defeating Darth Maul was sort of like, well, that's
It's good enough.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good enough.
um,
He had the high ground and you beat him. That's what ran to the rank of master.
yeah. But yeah, he's trying to teach Obi-Wan as well as Qui-Gon had taught him, but he's kind of struggling.
He's not Qui-Gon.
He's trying to teach Anakin as well as Qui-Gon
yeah.
taught him.
and
There's that name again.
yeah,
Yes.
Anakin is kind of, especially in the second film, he's kind of impetuous. He's a good student, but he's
a
also
moody teenager, and it's not a phase, Dad.
it's very impetuous. And Obi-Wan's doing his best, but he's like clearly a little out of his league. in
He has
trying
no
to-
parenting experience.
No. But I mean, there's a close bond between him and Anakin.
They're like
Very
basically
brotherly.
brotherly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and my brother, but Anakin.
But second film, Anakin is really struggling with his desires, we shall say, and
Because one of the things is, I feel like one kind of underlying thing about his character is he was born into slavery on Tatooine, and so he has never like had control or freedom, and that's kind of something he desires for his life. He wants control and freedom.
his interior pendulum is kind of swinging the other way, like too
Right.
hard.
So he's like, his motivation is to have more control.
He wants a
over
better
his
life for him and the people he
That-
loves.
Right. That's the initial ideal he's striving for.
But his mom dies, and that's outside of his control, so he goes nuts
It's
and
real angry about
get-
it.
kills all the sand people that he can
Not
find.
just the sand men, but the sand
And women and the
the
sand
sand
children
children,
too. I mean, that's not how he said it, but he doesn't like sand.
He doesn't like sand.
It's coarse and it's
rough
and
and it's irritating and it gets everywhere.
Imagine, or like me at 3 a.m. What if Anakin liked sand? But yeah, and Padme. I mean, okay, the episode 2, the Padme Anakin thing isn't very well written.
No, it isn't.
It's harder to make sense of than the romance between
Han and
Leia in the original trilogy. But let's see, how would you say, if we're being nice to the way it was written, like in the best case scenario, how can we say Padme's arc is through the original trilogy? Because she's
a queen who became a senator. She was like,
yeah, because queen was sort of a temporary,
more like a political title. It's more like a president.
Yeah, and
she was only
the
14
Naboo,
when she was the queen.
Yeah, in the Naboo political system or what have you.
Right.
But she's very she's an accomplished stateswoman and can shoot a blaster too.
Sometimes if
very competent person. Yeah, what? Especially like the thing that doesn't make sense to me is
I
like,
would really love to give you a good faith take on what on the heck was going on there, but I just can't.
But she falls for him like after he murders.
Edgy protagonist, attractive power.
Yes,
We're-
it is like.
And this isn't an anime.
Like I said, he drew inspiration from like some old Japanese movies.
And
Hence,
but yeah, I still have difficulty making out like what Padme's arc is.
They could, yeah. I feel like with a rewrite, they could have made it really believable and actually kind of work.
The political side of her makes sense. People rip on the original or the prequels for the politics and such, but the more you think about it, the more it makes sense in that.
Well, it's about the form. How does a republic turn into an empire?
Yeah,
basically, because behind the scenes, you've got Sheev Palpatine pulling all these strings.
And how do a powerful class of force-wielding warriors get punked and completely wiped out almost?
Right. And so if you look at it from like the Palpatine arc, in a way, there's kind of some really sneaky backhanded stuff going on, and it's like he's really kind of a genius.
Palpatine's pulling the strings. He's becomes the Supreme Chancellor.
And slowly he kind of accumulates more power through emergency votes because there's a war going on.
Secretly creating a clone army to fight the Separatists, who he's also pulling the strings for through
he's fabricated a war simply to make himself emperor.
He's controlling both sides via Count Dooku.
Count Dooku, who was also trained under
he was Qui-Gon's master.
He was Qui-Gon Jinn's master.
And he was Yoda's Padawan.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, Palpatine is, I think, in the original trilogy, he's one of the best characters, I'd say.
Given the recent revelations in the sequel trilogy, I would argue that Palpatine is the chosen one.
You think so?
I kind of think so. It kind of happened to, but that's real.
In spite of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's very much a mastermind through the whole series.
He is.
Very nefarious character.
He's also one of the most fun performances to watch.
Yeah.
Him,
Ian McDiarmid,
Obi-Wan.
right?
Ian McDiarmid, yeah.
Yeah, McDiarmid. Yeah, he's very, very good actor. It still surprises me that he played the Emperor in the first trilogy, and then
well, he only played it in 6 originally,
right.
Because I think like there was some woman in a rubber mask in 5 originally, but then they, Lucas had to.
It was a hologram, so
put his fingers all over the place and put a new hologram on the thing.
I'm just
at the
imagining
same time, why don't
George
I just
Lucas just like squeezing like a reel of film, just like
working.
Let me change all
I'm
this.
working my magic here.
It's like you're getting fingerprints all over. How did you make him look like Ian McDiarmid?
How'd you make him look like Hayden Christensen? He was bald.
Yeah, but anyhow, and sort of the way he manipulates Anakin through, especially Episode 3. Episode 3,
he plays to all his insecurities.
Episode 3 is probably, well, arguably one of my favorites of the Star Wars.
Arguably one of your favorites.
Wow, who would argue?
Who
with
is
you?
arguing with James about what his favorites?
Okay, never mind.
James?
Arguably one of the best in the saga.
I tend to.
I stand that.
Yeah.
I would defend that also.
Mm-hmm.
3,
Certainly
5,
the
and
best of
6.
the prequels, hands down.
Definitely, it wins by a landslide. I do
Which isn't
enjoy
difficult.
2. It had some really fun set pieces. I love.
Yeah, 2 is better. Every time I watch it, it's better than I remember it, for the most part.
The more you tune out the love story,
Yeah.
the more you focus on Obi-Wan's little mystery. Like,
yeah, like uncovering, like, wait, what's the deal? Because the separatists are sort of banding together with their battle droids in secret to...
right. And Obi-Wan's on this, like, sniffing out the clues. He's on this...
And he also
Dick
finds the
Tracy,
clone army.
Investigation.
Yeah.
He does all the research, and the
Finds
archives are incomplete.
Django Fett,
Fights Django Fett. Yeah.
who's apparently got a bunch of clones being made for the Republic, but nobody at the Republic knew about it.
Uh-huh.
It's like kind of fishy.
Django Fett. We already mentioned Boba Fett, but
Mhm.
his one request is to have an
clone
unaltered
son.
clone of himself, so
Yeah.
he has a son that is also just his genetic DNA.
Have you been bounty hunting recently? Anyway.
And then Django Fett dies because Samuel L. Jackson cuts his head off with a purple lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
Fun stuff.
Mace Windu's pretty cool character, but
He's pretty cool. Doesn't like offer much in terms of like analysis or like.
just enough, just sass.
I mean, you go in a little bit deeper, and it's like he's actually one who studies the whole spectrum of the Force while not practicing the dark side, so he has this like understanding of it. Hence why his blade is purple, a combination of blue and red.
Yeah.
Although that was like later.
Just because Samuel L. Jackson wanted a
Sam
cool
Jackson
looking...
just wanted a purple lightsaber.
Yeah.
But they later added like an explanation for it.
Which
I love how you can point to literally anything in Star Wars, and there's backstory to it somewhere.
Mhm.
Every random character in the bar from the first like Star Wars 4 has a backstory and a name.
There's
The
a
Death
whole-
Sticks guy has a story in the comics. I'm fairly certain of it.
Man,
It's kind of great.
there's so much lore. It's ridiculous.
And there's so much room for it. I feel like it's fun stuff.
So, do we want to acknowledge the new trilogy? We're not fiercely anti the new trilogy, but it's not that good.
It does a lot of things wrong,
Yeah.
and it
Here's-
is definitely a product of the late 2010s culture.
Yes.
I
It doesn't add anything meaningful to Star Wars, in my
Yes,
opinion.
it is a commercial product that was every artistic, creative decision was made in order to sell more movie tickets, more copies of the DVDs, more merchandise, etc.
I feel like it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. There was parts of the trilogy. I'll say trilogy loosely because they barely feed into each other.
Yeah.
But there's parts of the trilogy that feel like they wanted to be an homage and a callback to the originals and like kind of a fulfillment of that, even though it was already fulfilled.
Let's pay.
And then there's other parts that wanted to be the exact opposite and move it in a strange, new, interesting direction.
All those characters you liked and wondered what happened to them after episode 6, we're just gonna kill all of them.
Well, you kind of have to.
Well, Carrie
You can't
Fisher
have it
stays.
be the Han Solo show because
Well, I can understand why they killed him.
Was far and away the best one of them.
Yeah.
it was the most promising. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
They-
It was
they
the
had-
unexpected journey of the
It
new
was
trilogy.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
8.
It was nothing but it was derivative, sure, but it was purely Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were some good space fights, there were some good lightsaber
Han's
battles.
death was really. I think that
Han's
scene was
death
very
was
well
purposeful.
executed.
It was purposeful and deserved.
good.
And
it was what it
Harrison
needed-
Ford wanted that for years.
He wanted that in Star Wars 5.
Yeah.
I feel like 8 with more direction and actually building up to the plot twists and proper resolution of the plot twists could have been okay.
Also, more stuff happening in the plot than
I feel like
car chase that lasts the entire movie.
right. Imagine if Star Wars 5 was like 90% Han and Leia in the Falcon in the
Free to-
asteroid field,
Yeah.
and like 2%
Let's free random space horses and leave the slave children to suffer.
Yeah, that. 8. Yeah.
The whole idea to have 3 different directors for 3 movies that are supposed to be
A
interconnected
trilogy?
was the dumbest decision anybody's ever made.
I mean,
You can question.
in the original trilogy, George Lucas only directed A New Hope, correct?
Right, but he
But
was
he
the one
still
writing
had-
it. He
Yeah.
had the creative vision.
Yeah.
Argue with his creative vision all you want for the prequel trilogy. At least there was one.
Yeah.
At least there was a clear direction.
And the culminated very nicely in Episode 3. Revenge
I
of the
feel
Sith.
like 7, 8, and 9 were a Mad Lib where 2 different people wanted to do completely different things.
Yeah.
And so when one person went one way, the other leaned all the harder the other direction, and then 9 was an overcorrection from 8 that
Who was
barely referenced
There
it.
was originally supposed to be
a third director.
J.J. Abrams.
But then they thought, oh wait, maybe
people
that's
didn't
a bad
like
idea.
8 too much. Maybe we should try to bring this back to you. J.J., can you fix this for us again?
But his turn to the right was way too hard.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a mess. There's some certainly fun parts.
Yeah.
It is.
Episode 9 was satisfying, if imperfect.
I watched it again.
It was what it had to be.
Right.
It
You
was
knew
not much more than that.
most of the
and it was
film.
held back by that fact.
Yeah. Most of the film made sense why they did everything.
Except this giant frickin' army of 20,000
And
Death
Palpatine.
Star level weapons.
But we
and-
need
and
to up the
Palpatine.
stakes from Starkiller Base and whatever.
Yeah.
Let's
It's
just have 20,000 of them instead.
Palpatine
Exactly.
being back still. I mean, I understand.
They could have built up to it and made it work, but they didn't.
Yeah.
They could have.
That's the sort of thing where having an overall creative vision would have come in handy.
From the beginning.
Right.
If they had, that could have been heavily featured.
It's
in
very
episode
clear that they
7,
made-
8.
I feel like the first 40 minutes of the movie should have been the last 40 minutes of episode 8.
Yeah.
You know?
And they could have cut out the whole
casino
po-
thing.
yeah.
could
The
just
whole
go
casino
right
thing.
away.
But I think it's very clear that they were making up the new trilogy as they went along. And there wasn't like a
Yeah, there
clear,
wasn't-
cohesive vision.
Which is dumb.
I mean, they managed to make Rey make a little bit more sense by the end of it.
But that's because they had to.
Yeah.
Because the first 2 movies, they were dead set on making her make no sense.
Yeah.
They wanted to make her like Anakin was. He came from nowhere. Nobody knew anything about him.
Yeah.
And like when you're talking about the Skywalker, the story of the Skywalkers, which is fundamentally what Star Wars is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She has to be connected somehow if she's the main character of this whole shebang.
And I honestly found Kylo Ren Ben Solo's arc to be far more compelling.
He had actually interesting things going on to begin with.
Adam
He was
Driver had a really
Driver
good
is an excellent actor.
Yeah.
And they actually had ideas about
Yeah.
what to do. With
They
Kylo
knew
Ren.
where he came from, and there was a clear direction. He was obviously on track to get redeemed.
Mm-hmm.
He was set up as an interesting character by being the failed student of Luke who idolizes Darth Vader.
Yeah.
So that's interesting right there.
His parents set out to save him and
Also
both
son
give up
of
their lives to do so.
Leia and Han, so
Yeah.
there's that.
There was context provided for his existence, and his goals and motivations had something behind them.
Yeah.
Rey
Like
is the
with
total
Anakin in the prequels, the context was provided by the results you know from the original.
Because you
trilogy.
see them happen.
You know what the end result is, and so you're like, okay, this is the
This is
starting
how that
point.
happened.
What's going to happen from here to there?
Yeah.
With Rey, you are starting at
No
0.
context. You don't know anything about her.
There is no context.
She
for her
doesn't know
existence.
anything.
She's got kind of a Captain Marvel problem that she doesn't know where she came from or why she's here. She's just
She has
really powerful.
Captain Marvel
Generically
problem
powerful.
for other.
But even in Captain
reasons,
Marvel, we find out how she got that way. I mean, you can say, well, yeah, you do it in episode 9, but then for like the first
But like, I don't think
They
they, knew
didn't
what
think
was
about that until
No.
they started writing episode
It's like,
9.
No.
oh wait, maybe we should explain why she's so friggin' powerful and important and like everything.
she's a Palpatine. Don't think about it. Please don't think about it. She just is, okay? Snoke doesn't matter.
Because
Yes,
he's
that
actually a
was
clone.
that was one of the things that upset me the most about
Yeah.
You set up a big bad and unceremoniously axes him.
Yeah. Okay. It was kind of a fun twist, but then you're like, but what? No. What?
Here's the thing. 8 wanted to be fun twist.
Yes.
That is all it wanted to do.
And everyone's
And
like,
so it twisted everything. It twisted Luke. It twisted Snoke. It twisted Rey. Everything about it was trying too hard to wow people with the twist.
it twisted It twisted Luke so much that Mark Hamill hated it.
So, but that's what it wanted to be. It wanted to be that I am your father moment.
But it fell
but
flat.
It couldn't be because it wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
I am your father. That has gravity and weight and a direction it's going.
That adds a whole new. Now Luke changes from wanting to just take down Darth Vader to wanting to save him.
Rey, you're nobody.
Yeah.
Snoke, you're dead. Those don't go anywhere.
No.
Those
it's like,
don't add anything interesting.
basically tells the audience, like, oh, everything you thought you came to this movie to see, guess what? No.
You were having fun speculating and theorizing and thinking that maybe the important plot points from the first movie were going
Meant
to be
something.
resolved and addressed at all.
Yeah.
Nope.
None of those matter.
Nope. Chuck Testa.
It feels kind of. It feels like a lot of wasted effort
Yeah.
when like an investment as a audience member when you walk into it and you're like, okay, I want to see how this goes. I'm sort of episode 7 was kind of promising. I want to see where they go with this, and I was like, all of that
It didn't
goes
go anywhere with
nowhere. Like,
which is why they had to scramble in episode 9 to make anything make sense after
I mean,
it. I feel like
the whole Holdo thing in there too is just supremely annoying.
why can't you tell Poe where you're going
Yes,
so that he doesn't send people to
So
a
that
casino
he
planet
doesn't
to
have
get
a
an
reason
untrustworthy
to
person
be
to get them
suspicious.
captured by the...
yeah.
It's a mess.
Mhm.
It is...
And why did you wait for like hundreds of people to get killed in those lifeboats before you did Kamikaze?
Before you did Stunning and Brave
Yeah.
with
Do-
your purple hair.
Although the light speed suicide was kind of cool.
it
Not
was
the suicide
visual-
part, but the light speed.
The light
attack
speed
thing.
ramming into the ship, that was visually spectacular. That was neat.
Uh-huh.
That's like... Oh, that's why they don't just light speed anyway.
Especially the bit where it wasn't like this big massive explosion. It was silence because, oh wait, we're in space. And it's at light speed, so you just wouldn't hear anything.
Oh, and you thought
You just
Captain
see-
Phasma was a cool, important, kind of setting up like Boba Fett rival character to the main character? No, she's dead.
Nope.
There's just 8 tried too hard to be subversive, and it subverted our expectations of it being good by actually kind of not.
Yeah. I was probably the most disappointing thing was, Luke just disappearing off into the forest. Okay, it's like, okay, I get why they did that.
That I don't so much.
I don't have...
Given the rest of it, that makes sense.
Right.
The rest of it is what I don't like.
Yeah.
Yes. In the context of everything else, that works.
It would be okay.
It still
to
feels
have
like a
Luke be
waste of
this-
Luke's character.
It was, but Luke was just this. I think it's okay to have him be this disillusioned. Like,
Sure.
I screwed up.
Yeah.
But then you redeem him because that's what Star Wars does.
Yep.
And he's not a bad guy. He hasn't gone to the dark side.
No.
He's still the Luke self he is. Who's
He's
kind
just
of-
despaired that he brought someone else to the dark side.
Yeah.
And so, that's a potential for redemption. And they're just kind of like, nope, I'm going to be angry the whole time and barely get to redeem myself at the end.
Mm-hmm. Work from home redemption.
Social distancing.
Kills him. What sort of message? Okay, never mind. We won't go there. But, well, there are, some good things about the new trilogy. We're not.
No,
Ultimately
it's not all
haters.
bad stuff. There's some fun stuff. There's some cool stuff. There's some neat ideas.
It's Star Wars, it was visually, artistically very well done.
Some decent moments of the score and the action hyping you up and being like, "Oh, cool." Just occasionally something dumb happens and it's like,
Mhm.
really, Disney, you gotta do that.
Poe and okay, here's the other thing too. Finn could have been an interesting character,
Poe could have been an interesting character.
but they just weren't.
Rose could have been an interesting character.
No.
She-
Rose could have been an interesting
could have
character.
been an interesting character.
She
They
could have
just-
also just been not there. She's like the Tariel of the new trilogy.
Holdo could have been an interesting character.
Yeah.
I disagree with. I mean, I am deeply annoyed with how they wrote Rose, but
Mhm.
making her not exist
doesn't.
I don't know that would have done anything. I think
Not to knock the actress, she did a good job. It
I
was
think
just very
we would
poorly
remember
written.
her very differently without the whole casino bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think we would remember her a lot differently without the. I'm just gonna randomly go out and sand on a suicide mission, prevent Finn from doing something meaningful and sacrificial.
I think the film would have been way better if Finn was allowed to sacrifice himself.
Yeah, give everyone else motivation, but no, we can't let the stormtrooper die.
Yeah, psych. He's not going to die. It's like, oh, just come.
So yeah, there was potential.
It could have been like
missed.
a Mad Max sort of thing with that one guy. Like,
where what a lovely day, spray paint my face white and sacrifice myself to save my friends.
Yeah.
Mad Max's Fury Road,
Yeah,
good movie.
Because he goes from wanting to sacrifice himself for glory for wanting to sacrifice himself to save other people. Could have been a similar thing for Finn. He's like, I'm now choosing my fate, and I'm going to sacrifice my life. Because I was a stormtrooper, and I was just thrown
I'm
into the
cannon
meat
fodder.
grinder.
I'll make myself cannon fodder, but for a good cause.
Mm-hmm. That would have been meaningful. He would have gone into a literal cannon.
Yeah.
To save everyone. That would have been great.
Also, I think they should have just let Rose be Rose, like a skilled mechanic, and fix things.
Yeah.
Because we haven't...
And not be the bombastic, swashbuckling hero. That is sort of the Rey/Finn job. That's the sort of character they were set up to be.
Yeah.
And Poe to an extent as well. But
It was kind of extra.
We need
baggage
more
they didn't
supporting characters that are interesting and fun. The original 2 trilogies had supporting characters that were in the background and were fun and memorable.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know.
they were allowed to be what they were.
Yeah.
Well, on a more
Anyway,
positive
we've
note,
griped.
Transcendentals time, boys and girls. Overall, Star Wars truth. What are some truths we can draw from it? I feel like somebody has, probably done this at some point. Some speaker at some conference or whatever.
Oh yes, there
podcaster. But we have to
Each
do it.
individual-
It's our shtick.
It's our shtick. We're
Right.
gonna do it.
We're gonna do it.
Truth.
Well, there's Darth Vader's redemption. There's the
There's
saving
always
power
redemption.
of redemption. There's always redemption.
Yep.
No matter how far into the dark side you go, there's
No matter how
always-
many younglings you've killed.
So that's one of the big themes. It's like the dark side's tempting, and you may fall into it for a time,
Mm-hmm.
but no one is beyond redemption. Even when you can't believe you can be saved yourself.
Yep. And then a lot of the other
Conscious
things.
of your emotions and don't let them rule you, but also don't totally repress them either.
Yeah, virtue
Right.
is the balancing of extremes. The Jedi were, their extreme was very controlling and, it's like, so they're like,
It's stoic.
They were
in a way.
repressing their desires.
very
and
stoic
their
and almost
emotions.
ruled by fear of the dark side as opposed to love for the light.
Yeah.
For goodness. And the opposite extreme being, the lust for power and control of the
which
dark
is-
side.
Best exemplified by Emperor Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
Good old Sheev.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth
Darth
Plagueis the Wise?
It's not a story the Jedi was dead to.
And
But yeah, I mean, obviously, the whole idea of the Force in the movies, it's kind of Eastern influenced
it is.
pantheism where, God is in everything, sort of heresy like that. But for the sake of a story, it doesn't really matter that much.
And you could also see as relying on the light side as being or drawing strength from the positive parts of the Force as kind of being analogous to grace, to in some way being like trusting the Holy Spirit, right?
Also, Obi-Wan in the prequels looks kind of like Jesus, apparently.
It's like
In episode
in episode 2 specifically,
Yeah.
he's rocking a mullet.
I'm sure most people have seen the meme where it's like, where the guy...
Are you afraid to post Jesus on your timeline?
And it's a picture of Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Ewan McGregor really nailed Obi-Wan.
It was neat. They did a good job tying his performance to Alec Guinness's performance later.
Yeah.
So he was like, he transitioned from being a kid to being Alec Guinness in a way.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
It was really neat. So yeah, truth, goodness. We kind of covered that, I suppose.
And in a lot of places, yeah, there's this brotherly relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin, this
Oh yeah, that's another thing too. Like the whole we sort of forgot to mention was like the whole conflict at the end of episode 3 was just like Obi-Wan is just incredibly heartbroken that Anakin fell to the dark side despite everything he did to try to, to try to lead him down the right path, and he failed ultimately, but never gives up on Anakin and looks to try to right his wrongs by protecting Luke in the desert in secret.
So Obi-Wan's character is a very fatherly, very just kind of caring and sensitive person. He's really cool.
Yeah. They really expand his character in the Clone Wars series, which could be its own episode, but, well.
We'd have to watch
We'd have to watch
first.
it.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's a bit long.
Yeah.
It
That
is.
maybe we'll do
Someday.
an episode.
Someday.
We'll see. They recently actually finally completed it, the series, because they cut it off when Disney bought Star Wars. But at any rate, beauty. Well, Star Wars has always been kind of the cutting edge of special effects and like filmography, technology, that sort of thing.
Not all of it holds up from the old movies, but even
Yeah.
then, thinking about the time it was made and that
It wasn't-
the stop motion in those movies was top of the line. The filming the ships and then
The world
compositing it
building.
together.
We like to talk about world building on this show. It built an entire galaxy and continues to.
One thing that's neat is, I mean, it's kind of unrealistic for a planet to have a single biome over out the entire thing, but every individual planet they go to has its own like color palette.
Yeah.
Right? You've got Tatooine, which is this very beige, browns and grays kind of planet.
Mm-hmm.
Then they go to the Death Star, which is harsh blacks and whites juxtaposed. And then you go to like Yavin 4 with the Rebel base, and it's all like lush and green.
Yeah, and you go to Dagobah. It's
a
misty,
murky, swampy, right? You've
mysterious,
you've got
Misty.
dangerous.
it's like brown and gray, greens.
A lot of unknown.
You've got Hoth, which is this harsh white snow planet, and
They're trying to hide because why would you ever look in the
Endor
harsh white
is
snow planet?
the redwoods.
Yeah,
So like every planet has its own like distinct identity. You could take a picture and then like put a blur filter over it, and you could still tell what part of the original trilogy it's from.
mm-hmm.
They kind of follow that with all
Camino.
that.
You got the big rain planet.
Yeah, Camino's big. You got a city planet with Coruscant. You've got Naboo's this kind of paradise cruise.
Lakes and rivers and all sorts of
The
sand.
Pacific Northwest
Yeah.
without the rain.
Yeah,
Right, because they gave all that to Camino.
And
Geonosis is like all the browns and reds and rocks and stuff. I don't know.
Sort of like
Arizona.
Arizona.
It's
yeah.
very Arizona. Then Mustafar is like this great place for a final battle. It's like
Yeah.
Darth Vader builds Castle 8 for Bowser there.
We if Geonosis is Arizona, then Tatooine's New Mexico.
It kind of is, though.
Yeah,
No, New Mexico is a little more vegetation.
a bit. At any rate. So yeah, and the new trilogy is like very very well shot. What I like about it is that they apparently shot it on film, so
So it kind of keeps that. Did they use the same kind of cameras they did with the original 2 trilogies?
no, that was in Rogue One. They used lenses from the original trilogy
Oh, yeah.
on modern cameras, so it had kind of a cool like throwback look, a little bit. But yeah.
Also, the soundtrack is top notch. John Williams is a master of like crafting iconic themes.
They did bring back a lot of
leitmotifs.
practical effects for the new trilogy.
Oh yeah,
Puppets
I
and
like
so
how
forth.
a lot
props,
of the characters were puppets that were enhanced with CGI.
and
The guy-
props and things like that.
I remember being in the theater and looking at the guy that was like, "This is worth 1/4 portion," and being like, "I don't know if that's a puppet or if that's
Isn't
a
that Simon
CG
Pegg?
character." And I'm kind of glad that I don't know because there's this mystery. I just feel like it's real.
Isn't that Simon Pegg that played that guy, the portions guy?
I don't know.
I thought it was. It was like a cameo.
He
but-
probably has a name and a 3-part comic explaining his
I'm
backstory.
Sure. Unity. Overall, if you take
Aside
the
from
original
the-
6,
The original 6 were conceived together as one cohesive story,
yeah.
and they all fit the same arc, this whole narrative.
I think originally George Lucas wanted to film them much closer together, but stuff happened, and it took him a while to get the prequels going.
I think it might have been like part of it was like, oh, the technology hasn't caught up to my vision yet.
Yeah, which fair enough.
That's why Bethesda's been holding out on Elder Scrolls 6 for 10 years.
Fair enough.
Except they sort of basically said they're doing it now.
Mm-hmm.
That's beside the point.
Yeah, it's similar sort of fashion. But yeah, it's very, very much centered around Anakin. I'd say.
It's Anakin's story.
Yeah, and his kids.
Right, because they're part of his story.
Yep, as kids tend to be.
And it has themes of coming together in unity, right?
Sort of making the galaxy whole again, because it's been sort of, years of war and conflict between the light and the dark, the Sith and the Jedi, and the rebels and the Empire and stuff have left it kind of scarred. And every time they overthrow the Empire,
Is that total
maniacs in the red train?
Yep. Between the
and
fundamentalists
then at the end of
and the
Star Wars
atheists.
6, they've fixed it. They've resolved it, and everyone's unified again. There's no more rebellions, no more resistances.
Except
No
there's
more
going to
orders.
be another giant galactic dictatorial regime that comes in. 20
Yeah.
years.
Which is actually the same dictatorial regime.
Sort of like the remnants.
Reskin.
Yeah, it's like the remnants of the old empire came back together for some reason.
But
yeah.
Anyway, gripes with that aside.
Yeah.
They're-
Overall,
it fits the themes.
we would recommend if you
If
already
you haven't
hadn't
seen it yet, thank you for listening to us talk about something you have no idea
Talk.
about.
I think that qualifies as a ramble.
Yes, it was definitely
Yeah,
a ramble.
we were all over the place, weren't we? I probably
Yeah.
should have put notes together for this. But
We
I
always say
figured-
that, and we never do it.
Riley does.
Yeah, Riley's more organized.
He's
I mean,
fine.
I have a couple times, but those were more guided ramblings than anything else on my part. But yeah, thank you for listening to that to that unguided ramble this time. Feel free to follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Check out our
James
website if you
might,
feel so
link
inclined.
That one.
That article I was talking about.
That article we were talking about.
Which is apparently 3 years old, but who cares? It's a good article. Yeah, on Twitter. Send us an email, palladianpapist@gmail.com.
Please.
And
We don't know who any of you are, but
thank you for
We
listening.
still love you.
We love you. Thank you for
Interact
listening.
with us, please.
And
we are desperate for attention.
share the podcast with people who you think might be interested, or even if they're not and need some education. Feel free to spread it around. It'd really help us out, and we'd appreciate that. So yeah, until next week, we are the Palladian Papists.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.